My name is Bex, I'm the hands behind Daisy and Dime, and today I'm going to be crocheting a pair of lace socks. I don't know where this came from, but around like 6-7 months ago, I just had this like massive urge to crochet socks. Like nothing could stop me. All I wanted to do was crochet socks, which is weird because one, I have never been someone who cared about socks before. Socks were always the least important part of my outfit. That has since changed. And two, I was a previous hater of crochet socks. I made a couple of pairs in around like 2018, 2019. Wasn't a big fan of the way that they fit, and I just kind of wrote off crochet socks as a whole as like, these are never gonna be as good as knit socks. I was convinced that like crochet socks could never work out. But then I realized that the only reason why I didn't really like crochet socks was because they tended to slump down a lot. So I made a pair and I added a little bit of elastic to the cuff, and that completely changed how these socks fit. So I have been converted. Crochet socks are great. Obviously, I do still think knit socks are better just because they're stretchier, they'll fit to your foot a little bit better, but crochet socks, they have a place at the table too, I will say. I'm a little bit biased because the pattern that I'll be working from today is my own pattern. These are my Whistling in the Dark socks. They are vintage inspired lacy socks. They have a lace panel that goes all the way up the top of the foot, plus up the leg. There's ribbing along the bottom so that you've got extra structure and support for all those areas that have wear and tear. Oh, also, really quickly, I just want to talk about this top over here. This is my Brunch in Brussels tank top. It's actually a sister design to my Whistling in the Dark socks. I actually made this design first and then I made the socks after. There is a pattern coming out for it, so keep an eye out for updates on when that pattern comes out. The folks over at Maxim sent me some of their fave socks yarn to try out, so I'm going to be making a pair of socks using this yarn. This is their ivory color, and it's a pretty standard, just like wool and nylon blend, like 75% wool, 25% nylon. Just a very standard budget-friendly sock yarn. It is a billion degrees outside in Toronto today, so I think I'm gonna make myself coffee and sit outside on my balcony where it's nice and shady so I don't melt. Okay, coffee time, and then let's get started. Okay, I'm back in my office because it was way too hot and way too windy outside. While I was outside though, I was able to get all of the increases done for my toe box, which is pretty cool. So now I just need to work a couple of rounds so that this ends up being long enough that it can cover my toes without them poking out through the lace. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish up the toe box and I will come and meet you back. Okay, I have officially finished my toe box. It always looks so tiny when you just make like the starting increases, and then when you actually like do it all, it like stretches out. Now I can actually get started on the body. So I'm going to be working the lace section on the top half of the sock, and then I'm going to continue the ribbing on the bottom. It's the next day. I actually got the entire body finished last night. Let me get close. I can show you. So here's what we have. So now we're going to be getting into the part of the sock that's a little bit trickier. So this is the gusset and the heel shaping. That's like the most important part of getting the sock to fit right. It's also coincidentally the hardest part of the pattern. So let's get into it. So I'm going ahead and starting with the gusset increases. So basically what you're doing is on the second and second last stitch of your ribbing, you're going to be putting an increase by chaining 2. That's our double crochet. And then we're going to do a post rib increase. Front post double crochet, and then another front post double crochet into the space. And then we're going to just go ahead and work the rest of our ribbing until we get to our second last stitch. Okay, so we have 2 stitches right before our ribbing finishes. So in the second last stitch, I'm going to work another post rib increase. So front post double crochet, front post double crochet, all in one stitch. And I'm going to work my last stitch of my ribbing. And now I can just go ahead and work the rest of my lace section as normal. So because we're working on a bud stitch row 4, it's double crochet, single crochet, double crochet, and then we get into making the actual bud flowers. So for our second and third gusset increases, we're basically repeating the exact same thing. So on our second stitch of the ribbing, we're going to be working a post rib increase. And you can see, so there's the increase from the first row, and then there's the increase from the second. And we're going to go back into working our post rib stitch. So we have 2 stitches of our post rib stitch left. So in the second last stitch, we're going to make our increase again. And then double crochet in that final stitch. Now we can just move on to working the lace pattern. So I'm going to do one more round of gusset increases, and then I'm going to meet you back. Okay, so I've just finished my gusset increases on both sides, and as you can see, it kind of looks like the post rib stitching is traveling upwards into the lace section of the sock, but it's actually not. When we work the heel, it's actually going to pull these down, so this line is going to remain straight. Looks a little wonky right now, but it'll all come together, I promise. Okay, so now we've arrived at what I would think is the hardest part of this crochet pattern, and that would be turning the heel. So in order to do that, you need 2 stitch markers, preferably 2 different colored stitch markers. This will help you differentiate between the odd and even numbered rows. We're going to place a stitch marker in our first stitch. So we're placing a stitch marker into our very first stitch of post rib stitch. And then we're going to place our other stitch marker on our very last stitch of the post rib stitch. We're going to start working our short rows. So this is how we're going to be turning our heels. To start this, we need to move our working loop over. So we're going to slip stitch into our first stitch, and then we're going to slip stitch into the next 6 stitches. We should end up on our 7th stitch, which, as you can see, our 7th stitch is our very first stitch where the increases aren't coming from. So there's our 7 slip stitches. And now we're going to chain 2, and we're going to begin post rib stitch all the way across. So I'm 5 stitches away from my stitch marker, and what I'm going to do is stop working my post rib stitch. I'm going to slip stitch into the next 2 stitches. So that's 1, 2, And then I'm gonna turn my work, and without chaining, I'm gonna skip the first 2 slip stitches that I made, and then I'm gonna continue working in my post rib stitch. Now remember, because we're working on the wrong side of the fabric now, we're gonna be using back post double crochets instead of front post double crochets. So I've reached the end of my heel, and now I'm back over at stitch marker 1. And so now I'm going to slip stitch into the next 2 gusset stitches, just like we did in the row before. And now there is 1, 2, 3 stitches from our marked stitch. I'm going to turn my work, and once again, without chaining, I'm just going to skip over those first 2 slip stitches that I made and go right back into my post rib stitch. You can actually start to already see the heel turning and coming upward. Basically what we're doing is we're using these extra stitches as scaffolding for our heel to attach to as we work up just the short rows. This is what's going to cause that nice curved shape of the heel, and it's going to prevent our sock leg from becoming too narrow. So I've just worked the last little bit of my ribbing. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip stitch again into the next 2 stitches. So that's one, and that's the other. And so now you should only have 1 stitch left between your working loop and your stitch marker. We're going to work again in turned rows. So I'm at the end, and then once again I'm going to make my 2 slip stitches. And now I only have 1 stitch left between stitch marker 1 and 1 stitch left between stitch marker 2. Okay, so I've reached the end of this row. So I've finished my ribbing. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip stitch into the last remaining stitch, and then I'm going to slip stitch into my marked stitch. So this side is done. We're all done. And now we're going to work our very last row. So once again, 1, 2, get into our post rib stitch. Work it all the way until we get to the marker. We're at the end now, so we're working our second last and last stitch. And now what we're going to do is slip stitch into the last stitch and into our marked stitch. Now all we have to do is turn our work and then slip stitch into that very first stitch of our heel. And that's it. We have made our heel. You can get rid of these 2 markers now. Okay, so I just got finished making the heel, and this is always the most exciting part because now like it's actually looking like a sock, which is really cool and not just a weird tube. So I think I'm gonna follow the pattern's recommendation to make the heel extended a little bit, like the height of the heel will go up a little bit onto my ankle, because right now I tried it on, it's quite a bit short, so I'm gonna add a couple of rows to that, and then I really just have the sock leg to do. Oh, and the cuff. And then this sock is finished, which is really exciting. The sun is starting to set. It's around like 8:15-ish. I actually don't know the actual time, but I probably have another like 45 minutes of daylight left. So I'll see what I can film as I finish this up. Hello, it is day 3 of making these socks, and today is actually a really gloomy, miserable, rainy day. I've been hoping that the rain was going to stop. I wanted to take Loki out for a trip to the park, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I'm going to take that as a sign to stay in, enjoy some marathon crocheting. So last time I left off, I had just finished extending up the heel. So the socks fit really great right now, and now all that's left for me to do is the sock leg. So yeah, gonna finish my lunch, get cozy, and hopefully we shall finish some socks today. Okay, so I have almost finished my first sock. All I have to do is add the cuff to this, which in my opinion is like the most crucial part of getting a crochet sock to work. And my secret is you use a little bit of elastic in the cuff. So before I get started on crocheting that, I'm actually just going to sew my little elastic loop. You want to make sure that when this is sewn into a loop, it's got a smaller width than what your sock opening does, the leg opening. Because otherwise, if it's too big, then there's really no point in the elastic. Okay, today is day 5, I believe, of our sock project, and I think this is going to be the last day that I'm working on them. I should get them done. I realistically have no excuse to not finish them today because I'm literally on the home stretch. So I've finished everything except for the sock leg and the cuff on this one, and then I'm done. I'm finished. So that's really exciting. I just got back from the theater. Me and my friend went to go see Longlegs, and I didn't like it, to be honest. It started off so good, and then by the end of the 3rd act, it was just like not a satisfying end to the movie, in my humble opinion. While I was watching Longlegs though, I kept thinking to myself like, oh, I should watch Silence of the Lambs when I get home because this is really reminding me of it. So I'm gonna put that on, and I will be finishing this sock. What are you doing? Okay, final movie stretch, and I will get this sock finished. Okay, so I finally finished up my pair of Whistling in the Dark socks, and I'm over the moon with how they've turned out. Obviously, I'm gonna be a little bit biased because it's my pattern, but I had a lot of fun making these. I feel like socks can sometimes feel a little monotonous, especially because you have to make 2 of them. But honestly, I did not get bored making these socks. Like, there's so much going on with them. like between having to increase for the toe box, there's like the split stitch pattern, you have to increase to make the gussets, and then you gotta do the heel flap, and like the leg of the sock is different from the body of the sock. And like there's just so much going on in this pattern that I did not feel bored at all making these. It honestly went by really quickly. Even making the second sock, which usually when I have to make like a second anything, like whether that's like a sock, a mitten, a sleeve, like it's just like, oh my god, why is it taking so long? I tend to lose all motivation to make a second whatever. So I am really glad that that was not the case for these. I opted to do kind of the more lacy edge along the cuffs. You can totally just leave them straight, but I think they just look so cute with that extra detail. As for the yarn, Worked Up, this is not the softest pair of socks I own. It's a little tiny bit on the scratchy side, I'm not gonna lie. But I think this will be a pretty durable yarn. It reminds me a lot of Drops Fable, if I'm being honest, which is like a very tried and tested sock yarn. I also used actually for the yellow sample that I made in the pattern itself. So I do recommend that one as well. This one also I do recommend, the Mary Maxim Fave Socks. It was good. I did like working this up. The natural white color honestly is just super pretty. I feel like you can't go wrong with a like white or a neutral color for these socks. I really find that the lighter colors help to make all of the details in the sock pop more. If you've been inspired by this project vlog to make your own Whistling in the Dark socks, I do sell the crochet pattern on my Etsy shop. It's actually brand new to my shop. I just released it on July 20th. So it's hot off the press, and it's actually my very first sock pattern that I've ever published, which is really exciting. I don't usually make accessories, but there was just something about socks that had me in a trance, and I really wanted to try making my own pattern. If you do give it a try, leave a comment down below, let me know what you think of it. If you enjoyed watching this video, be sure to like it, and if you want to see more project vlogs from me in the future, make sure you leave a comment down below. This was a lot of fun to film, and I would definitely love to do it again. And if you would like to see more from me, make sure you subscribe and be sure to turn on notifications so that you never miss an upload from me. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. I will catch you in the next one, and as always, happy crocheting. Take care. Bye!